Hello, I'm Coach Patel and I'm joined by my co-host Jamie Bettridge. We would like to welcome you to the Football in Business podcast, where we will discuss all things football and business.
On this podcast, we will delve into the minds of various individuals who have been involved in football and gain insight on the game that we'd all love to know.
We will hear some brilliant stories and have some great laughs as we speak to individuals from the football world. Added to this, we will get an insightful view into the mind of someone who is a part of the game and understand how easy it is for them to transfer their core skills into business life whilst finding out about business ventures they are a part of.
We've got some great guests lined up which can hopefully give us all a different view of the game and where life has taken them after the game. Please hit like, share and subscribe, and if you know anyone who would be suitable for the show, please put them in touch.
Welcome back to the Football in Business podcast. Today, for our first episode, we have an absolute cracker for you. It's only the man who's never made an appearance for Scotland. It's Antti Niemi. Delighted to have you, Antti.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us.
So let's crack straight into it. So if we start towards the beginning of your career, Antti, and when you started to get recognised at Copenhagen, and then Rangers come in for you, how do you deal with the mental pressure of having to move abroad and live somewhere unfamiliar and potentially have to spend a lot of time away from the family?
Well, when I went to Copenhagen, first of all, it was I played at the highest level in Finland for 4 seasons. I won the Finnish championship and I was voted the best player in the league and so on. So I was kind of like, I thought that my chance was gone to play abroad like ever. And FC Copenhagen, they had their first choice keeper who got injured in the middle of the season, and then they knew someone from Finland that they asked if there's any senior goalkeepers who would do the job, who would come over to Copenhagen and do the job, and that's how I got my place in FC Copenhagen. So it was pretty much pure luck that I ended up going there, and then I would love to say that. Since I was a kid, I was aiming to be a professional footballer and so on. But you have to remember that I was a child at the 70s, and I was a teenager at the 80s. And in Finland, we hardly had any footballers who were playing abroad and making career out of football. So I thought that I was never going to be a professional footballer. So all my first moves to Copenhagen and then to Rangers, they were like. I was pretty much as surprised as anybody else that I ended up in Scotland. In the first place, It all happened very quickly. I wasn't a young boy anymore. I was 23 when I went to Copenhagen, and I was 25 when I went to Rangers. So
And when Rangers came calling, Antti, did you know much about the history of the club? Obviously, a huge club.
Yeah, I knew Glasgow Rangers. It was and still is a massive club, and but at the time, mid 90s, it was, one of the, I'm not saying the biggest clubs in Europe, but a massive club. They were playing in Europe.
Of course,
they were playing in Europe every season and winning the Scottish League, and they had some famous players playing for them. So I knew where I was going to. It was a big challenge, and it didn't quite work for me. Because I ended up going to Hearts after 2.5 years, but great experience nevertheless.
So if you weren't expecting to, like you said yourself, you weren't expecting to be a professional player, was there something in the back of the mind that you always thought you'd end up pursuing and do other than football?
Well, I did my national service back in 92, 93, which we all have to do in Finland, and I was playing in HJK Helsinki at the time, and I actually started my physiotherapy studies 6 months before I went to Copenhagen. So I probably would have been a physiotherapist, to be honest.
It's incredible how life changes, and obviously, in this current day, we've got Son Heung-min of Tottenham. He's out in North Korea at the moment doing his national service. I'm sure. But for the modern game, that's very different. But obviously, you know what that's all about. What was it like playing football and having to do national service at the same time?
We had an option, and we still have an option. Like it's called the Sports Military School. So the first 3, it starts in, if I remember right, my service started right after the season, which the Finnish league ends in October. And that's when we started our service. And, the first 3 or 4 months, they were pretty like normal army, like, we're doing all the, long days and studying hard and doing all sorts of things, like having camps in the woods and all that. But after that 3 or 4 months, it was quite easy because we got a lot of spare time to go to, the trainings and all that. So it's a different from so-called normal service.
Yeah, so there's a nice balance to life there.
Yeah.
And you've already touched on it. After Rangers, you obviously then moved over to Edinburgh and you went to Hearts, where you became is it fair to say, a fan favourite, and where the career really took off?
Well, don't know about that, but looking back, I really enjoyed it, and I hope I don't sound cocky, but I played really well. It was really enjoyable for me. I was, one of the, profile players for the team, and I was important part of that team, and we did really well. Obviously Celtic and Rangers, they were the biggest ones, and they were always number one and number two. But we were third in both my full seasons. We ended up in a third place, so it was a good time for the Hearts, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I was, I felt that I was a big part of the team, a big part of that success, and what can I say? It was good times for me.
Definitely, yeah. No, of course, you can see here you've played in a few countries across Europe, and obviously you hear a lot of footballers talk about Scottish fan bases. What was the Hearts fan base like?
To be honest, because I was at Rangers for 2.5 years, and obviously I played against Hearts once or twice, and I visited Edinburgh, and I kind of had a sense that it's like I said earlier, Celtic and Rangers, we all know that they're the biggest and the massive clubs, but I was quite surprised when I settled into the team, and when I started to know the club and see the fans and meet the fans and play games for them. I was a bit surprised that it was bigger club than I thought. To be honest, it's a massive club, and it means a lot to a lot of people in Edinburgh. Just like Hibs means a lot to the the other half of the Edinburgh people. So,
of course.
So yeah.
So if we sort of fast forward to when you went over to Southampton.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the you were recognised as being probably one of their best goalies that they've ever had. Obviously, in football, it's going to be inevitable that you do get low points. What was the feeling like in 2005 when you got relegated? You're coming up against Man United in the dressing room. Do you sort of feel like we could get something from this, or are you sort of a bit disheartened before it even starts?
Well, you always feel like you have a chance, even against the bigger clubs, but the whole season was just. I actually gave an interview not only a few weeks ago, and the same question came up, and I could only describe it as embarrassment. That's what I said. I think it was like ask any player who was part of that team at the time, because you have to remember that the previous 2 seasons we did pretty well. I think we were seventh, I think 8th and 12th, and we reached the cup final, and we were doing pretty well under Gordon Strachan. But then everything changed, and the whole season was just a big struggle. We lost some of the better players like Wayne Bridge and James Beattie, and the Gordon Strachan left, and so it's just a bit of a chaos. But yeah, it was definitely, if I could change one thing in my career, that would be something that obviously I can't do it, but it still haunts me a little bit. I'd rather do without it, because I wasn't playing up to my standards that season, and I don't think any player who was part of that team would say, they would probably say the same. We didn't, during that season, we hardly had any success stories.
Could you feel the change in the dressing room throughout the season?
Yes.
Was there a big dip in sort of morale and how people were going around the training ground, or was there a player that you remember playing with that really got hold of that dressing room and said, "Right, lads, we've got to fight for this here"?
We had some good characters in the team, but because mainly we were losing games during that season. Occasionally we got a good result, but it was just a big struggle the whole season, and I wouldn't say it was a problem with the morale. I think we were all professional footballers training well and trying our best, but it just wasn't enough. I think that the standard of the team, it went down from the previous 2 seasons. Like, the quality went down. So just a horrible time. So I remember like big name players who enjoyed the last couple of seasons. They were enjoying football and they were laughing and we were having good time. We were working hard, but we were a compact group that we had a good spirit in the team. They started to struggle. You didn't hear many laughs, or you didn't. You go into a training ground in the morning and people were not smiling anymore, and it's just it's not a nice feeling.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, you're going into that last game, and we all play local football, and we know who the good teams are locally. And even at the worst of times, you don't want to play against them. What is it like knowing you have to win when you've got the likes of Ruud van Nistelrooy coming at you?
Yeah, well, it wasn't an easy task. Man United was, probably the best team at the time, together with a couple of other clubs. But I would be lying if I said that we went into that game thinking that, we're gonna win this for sure, because we had some very bad performances early on the season, and too many of those. So we tried, but we knew that it's gonna be a massive challenge.
Would you say it was worse getting relegated or losing the FA Cup final in 2003?
Oh, that's an easy choice. Getting relegated, obviously, because
Because moving on to the FA Cup final in 2003, of course, what a great season for the club. Morale's high. You're going through the rounds, and a big part of this podcast is mental health and how you deal with emotions when you've got 20,000, 30,000 fans cheering you on. Obviously, getting injured in that final when you've got all the enthusiasm of being there and knowing that you can't do anything to help your team with how long's left in the game. How was that, Antti? To get injured in the final.
Yeah, well, you have to. I was injured before the final. I was going into the operation after the last game of the season, and the club doctor gave me an injection in my knee just to get through the game. And I remember him clearly. He was saying to me like a couple of days before the game that when we decided that he's gonna stick something in my knee to, I don't know what it's called, to make it numb. Like I couldn't feel the pain. So he said that there are risks in here, and if this wasn't a cup final, he would definitely not allow me to play in that game. But obviously, I wanted to play, and I said that I don't care. Just do whatever you have to do and hope for the best. But and I remember the injury because actually, it's obviously when you play against Arsenal, it's going to be busy, and I felt that I was having a decent game, and we were all enjoying it. Only felt that as long as it's 1-0, we can still win the game. And but that specific injury, what happened to me? I took a goal kick, and I didn't get any warning signs. I felt absolutely fine. But when I kicked the ball, I just felt my calf just snapped, and I would have been out for a few weeks after. If we had any games left, I would have been out for good 2 or 3 weeks because there was a tear in my calf, which is quite normal when your knee is struggling. Other parts are trying to compensate and whatever it's called. But I knew there were risks, and I would have rather played the whole 90 minutes or whatever. But I knew the risks, and unfortunately that happened.
Definitely, when you read the reports and you watch the highlights, until you came off, as you said, you were having a great game. Going into that dressing room afterwards, and you've just lost 1-0 to. Look, let's not put it aside, a very, very good Arsenal side.
They were pretty decent at the time, I have to say.
Yeah, they were, weren't they? What was Gordon Strachan saying to you guys?
To be fair, I can't really specifically remember what he said, but I would imagine that he wasn't happy because we lost the game.
Of course.
Anyone who knows Gordon Strachan, he's competitive and he demands a lot, but he's fair. If I have to guess, I would probably say that he said that you gave it all. We were playing against a very good Arsenal team, and I can't blame you. Thank you for giving the best you have, and let's move on. Probably something along those lines.
So if we sort of, obviously we just touched on a few of the low points of the game. If we sort of go on to the high points, how did it feel when you made your first appearance for Finland, and then going on to make 67 appearances for them?
It was a very proud moment, but I think it was back in 92 autumn '92 when a couple of our younger players got their first senior cap. Sami Hypia was one of those players that me and Sami made our debut in a senior side in the same game. It was a practice game somewhere in Tunis or something like that. And it was obviously something I wanted to do for a year or so because I was playing for under 21s. I was a captain for the team for a while, and I felt that I've earned my chance. And when you get that first call up, then obviously you're very proud. And thankfully, I had 66 other games under my belt after that first game. So very proud of it. But unfortunately, it looks like Lukas Radetsky, who's playing for Leverkusen at the moment, he's gonna have quite a few more caps than I do. So
he's a very good goalkeeper, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a great goalkeeper and a wonderful guy as well. It's such a pleasure working with him at the moment.
Definitely. I was just going to come on to that because obviously, as we know, ice hockey is very big in Finland. Before you, the name Littman and a lot of people across Europe know. And then yourself, Jussi Jääskeläinen, Mikael Forsell, Sami Hypia, Pukki. How's that, with Pukki in the Premiership scoring goals at the start of the season? How is football changing in Finland? Is it getting more popular, would you say?
Yeah, Finland has always been a big sport in Finland. It's funny when you speak to foreign people, the ice hockey and cross-country skiing, that sort of stuff always comes up. But Finland has always been a massive sport. We are the biggest sport in Finland at the moment. If you look how many people do that, we have something like 100 and, way more players than, for example, ice hockey. But ice hockey is a big sport and it means a lot to a lot of people. But and it has changed. If you look at our games nowadays, we have proper fans, first of all. Like when I started playing for Finland back in, 92, 93, and then I was the first choice after 95 or 96 and played for 12 years. We had some hardcore fans, but there weren't too many of those. But if you look at our games now, especially at home and also away, we have proper fans. It might sound funny to you, but that wasn't always the case. And obviously, before this last 2 years, we've done pretty well, or we've done fantastically well. We reached the European finals, which hopefully will be next summer. And but couple of seasons before that, couple of years before that, we were struggling big time. For example, we had 1 year that we didn't win one game, and that was a horrible time. And going from that losing streak to having a 2 years period when we reached the finals, that was unbelievable transformation. And the credit goes to the players, obviously. There's some good young players coming through, and it's been really enjoyable.
Definitely. And being a successful goalkeeper yourself, we touched on Radecki already, the Leverkusen keeper. How influential is he, a man of that experience in goal for the Finland side? Is he a big character in the Finnish dressing room?
Yeah, he is. He's not the loudest, but he's the funny guy in the team. If you ever get a chance to look at his interviews, he's hardly making any sense. And that's his strength. That's his strength as well, because Lukas is like technically there are a lot of goalkeepers who are just as good as him when you talk about goalkeeping techniques. But what separates a decent goalkeeper and top class goalkeeper like Lukas is I can't see any difference going into the game. And I mean, like, if we go to a training game when there's 500 people, and then we go to the qualification game when there's 50,000 people, I can't see any difference in him. He's always exactly the same. He's always smiling. He's always relaxed. And
I guess that puts those teammates at ease as well.
Yes, obviously, like in any team, when you have 23 players, they are like, the funny guys and the relaxed ones. And then there's like players who are starting to get nervous like 2 days before the game. And we all need those characters. But I'm sure that because he's one of our biggest players playing in Bundesliga and in the Champions League, it's easy for the other players to look at him and like minute before the kickoff and think, okay, it's only football. I can relax. We're good, So his influence is big in the team, definitely. Yeah.
So if we move on, because obviously we're saying about players getting nervous. One bit I want to touch on is in 2003 when you're at Stampton and you're playing Pompey. you win the game 3-0, puts you into 4th place. But before the game, obviously you're not from Southampton, but do you sense how much the fans want you to win this game, and do you get a bit more nervous than usual?
Well, I have to say that I was lucky because, and I'm probably going back to that statement what I said earlier, that I never thought I was going to be a professional footballer. I probably would have been more nervous before the games if that was something that what I was thinking since I was like 5 years old and putting everything into it, and wanting to be a professional footballer. Like the pressure probably would have been bigger, but because I kind of like everything just went naturally, and probably it's my character as well. I hardly ever get nervous about anything really.
So you probably went into it just another game that you want to win, sort of thing.
Don't get me wrong. There were games like when I was kicking the walls and punching the whatever like windows after the game when I felt that I didn't do well. Like I did get angry at the times, but most of the time I was like just enjoying my football. I knew that I was very lucky, and I couldn't really see any point like being too nervous before the games. It just wasn't me, and I'm pretty sure that that was one of the things that why I managed to make a decent career out of football. Like,
so would you say you were sort of one of the players in the dressing room that would sort of try and help calm down the nervous players? Because I should imagine you probably do get one or two that get a bit of jelly legs and
I wasn't like trying to do anything. That was just me. I was like yawning before the games, and I know that Gordon Strachan didn't mind it. He actually told me once that I love to see you like so relaxed, like nothing phases you. Like I said, well, thank you, but it's not something that I planned or I do on purpose. Like that's the way I am. But then I know that there are some other coaches who hates it. Like they don't like players being too relaxed before the games. But it worked for me, and I remember like I give you an example when I was playing for Hearts, and we had like I think all of our captains, all 3 players were missing before one. I can't remember what game it was. But I actually went to Craig Levine and I said, Craig, Gaffer probably. I said, we have, so many captains. I'd love to captain this team once. And he just looked at me and he said, Antti, I love you, but you're probably the last name when I'm thinking about captains like before the games. I said, oh, fair enough. So.
Brilliant.
But I guess when you've made 418 appearances across your career, there probably comes a point where it's just another. It does become another game for you, another pre-match process, and you just know what you have to do.
Yeah.
Or does every game feel different?
Well, in a way, obviously, every game is different. And don't get me wrong, when I played in the Premier League, like and in the big cup finals and all that, of course, I wouldn't say that I was nervous, but obviously, you know what you're gonna do. Like you can't relax too much because. There's a lot of pressure on you, and people are, following you, and you got your fans who want you to do well. But I wouldn't say that it got normal like ever. But luckily for me, I was like pretty relaxed, and I really didn't stress about too much.
Definitely. Then, of course, the move to Fulham. You were there for a while. Well, how would you describe if you had to describe your time at Fulham in a sentence? How would you describe the time at Fulham? You made 62 appearances there across 2 years.
Yeah, I was there about just over 2 years. I enjoyed it. I love Fulham because I know the family club is said. A lot of times people say they use that word a lot, but Fulham is not. It wasn't Arsenal or Chelsea or anything like that, but it was a decent club. Great manager at the time, good players. Very enjoyable. And my, my family and everybody. It was an enjoyable time. Like West London is not a bad place to live if you want to enjoy your life. So,
no, it's not.
But football was good. I enjoyed it.
Because at the time before you went to Fulham, there were rumours of Manchester United and Arsenal coming in for you. Was it the fact you didn't want to move there, or did they not quite?
I'm pretty sure that was never the case, but I probably would have heard about it. Even when I was playing for Hearts, there were all sorts of rumors, but never my agent at the time or the managers never said anything. I'm sure if you play well in Scotland and, for Southampton there, when the so-called bigger clubs are making their lists before the season, that who you might wanna make, get into your squad. Like my name probably was somewhere at some point, but nothing really ever came to my. I knew nothing about it, so I don't know. Maybe there was something.
Nothing really.
No, nothing serious. Definitely no.
And then, of course, from Fulham, this is a question. You then went to Portsmouth for the year, and obviously, did it ever cross your mind when the offer was put on the table, making those appearances for Southampton, and how when you look back on your career, was there ever a worry that the legacy may be harmed by moving to Portsmouth with your time at Southampton?
Of course, of course. But the thing was that when I was playing for Fulham, I had my career ended like the last season when we were struggling. I lost my place. By the end of the season, we were struggling, and we managed to stay up. And Casey Keller took over. He played for the last third of the season, and I was on the bench, and I was injured a lot. I had all sorts of injuries like Achilles tendon and shoulder and all that. But the main thing that I stopped playing for Fulham was like I hurt my wrist, and there was an operation that it would have taken 5 or 6 months to get back to the training even. And I was always pretty much the number one. I always went to the clubs. I chose my club so that I have a very good chance to play as a first choice keeper. And I felt after that, the third season, that my time has come. I wasn't enjoying training because I was always hurting. And I knew that I could stay at the club earning decent money, but the chances for me to play as a first choice keeper was very limited. And I just made the decision that I spoke to the club and said, my daughter is going to first grade in Finland, and this could be a good time for me to pack up and just go back home. And we made a deal, and that was it. And both parties were happy. But actually, I didn't go to. Obviously, it took me, the half year to get my wrist sorted. It was, I had an operation on it, and it took a long time to get it back into the shape that it was before the surgery. But 10 months after that, I stopped playing. I had a phone call from David Coles, who was a goalkeeping coach for Southampton when I was playing there under Connor Strachan. And so I didn't go immediately from Fulham to Pompey. So it was 10 months, and that's a long time for any footballer. So David calls me, and he says that, "Are you physically fit?" I said, "Yes. I haven't gained 2 stones, and I like to do my sports, and so I'm physically all right. Why?" And he said that he's a goalkeeping coach for Portsmouth now. I knew that obviously, and he said that the plan was that David James was first choice keeper, and he was playing. Yeah. He was playing really well at the time. I loved watching him. He was playing so well. But they had 2 other goalkeepers, Jamie Ashdown and Asmi Begovic, who were both senior goalkeepers. Asmi was youngest goalkeeper at the time, but they were both good enough to play first team football somewhere else. So the plan was that David James is going to be number 1, and Jamie and Asmi are going to find a club that they can go on loan for a season. So he said, "Could you come and just cover David James?" And they offered me the money was decent. I was living at home, not thinking about football. And then David comes up with the offer like that. If it wasn't for David Coles, and we are still friends, we keep in touch all the time. If it wasn't for him, obviously I would have said, no, I don't need this. I don't, but I own David a lot. I own David a lot. We're friends, and he said that come over, and obviously I was asking the questions myself, like you said. It's Pompey, bloody hell, just anybody else but not Portsmouth, because I played for Southampton. But I ended up saying yes, and the funny thing, or it's not even a funny thing, but when the season started, Jamie and Asmi, they were both there. So we had 4 keepers. Four senior goalkeepers who they've all played Premier League football, and all 4 were pretty decent keepers. So obviously the plan was that I was going to be number 2. Now I was number 3 or 4. So it wasn't really good for anybody. And it was a funny season, like, what happened to Portsmouth during that season. It was, all the financial struggles and everything, but great players.
Definitely.
Some good memories as well. Don't get me wrong. They have some quality players in there.
I think what's great to hear about that story there is your loyalty to David. In football, in your football career, was there many people that you felt, that were loyal to you, or was it very much you're out there for yourself with your management team?
I felt I'm not quite sure what you mean, but like I didn't get my memories in football, in professional football, are 90% positive. I met some great people, like a lot of very, very good coaches, not only good coaches, but good human beings. And, the colleagues and, the other goalkeepers and teammates that I had, mostly I miss them. Like I can't really name any players or any coaches that I would not want to see one day and have a cup of coffee or beer or whatever. Like, I was very happy and very lucky to play professional football and I met so many good people in football.
I think that's great to hear, because there's so many, in the press, or you hear negative stories, but football is a young person's dream, and to hear the positive stories is brilliant, Antti. So I think we should move on to our quick fire round.
Okay.
So we've got a series of questions here for you. 1-word answers and one name. So if we start with the biggest joker in the game you've ever played with.
Gaza.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Brilliant. The best player you've played with?
Ooh. Litmanen?
Yeah, I don't think many would argue with that. The best player you've ever played against?
Ronaldo.
He's incredible.
The worst trainer?
You're not allowed to say yourself.
I would be up there or down there, whatever. Worst trainer. I can't remember really bad trainers. Maybe I was lucky. I can't really come up with a name so quickly. Sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. You've taken the easy route out, Antti. I'll give you that one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Who had the most natural ability that you've ever played with?
Natural ability. What is natural ability?
So the game just comes naturally to them. They may not put the hours in on the training ground, but when the ball's at their feet, they can do anything.
Yeah, but the best. I would say Litmanen again, but he trained hard when he was a kid. People see him as a pure talent, but he trained a lot during his career. But if you ask it like natural, his game looked so easy. He was always on the right place. Another one I have to say is Brian Laudrup, who played for Rangers. He was a joy to watch. It looked so easy. But both of those players put a lot of hours in, don't get me wrong. But it looked easy.
Of course. Brilliant. The biggest teacher's pet you've played with? So the manager's best friend?
Oh, dear. Oh, my God. Oh, manager's pet. Gordon Strachan didn't have any.
No, he seems like quite a strict
but he
guy.
loved Paul Telfer. But Telfer was a great guy. Right. I'm not playing Strachan because Paul Telfer was a real athlete. He could run hours and hours, and he was always good on a training ground and always gave his best in the games. But I don't know. I say Paul Telfer.
Paul Telfer. The best manager you've ever played with that's helped progress your game?
Is that a manager or a goalkeeping coach, or could it be any coach?
If we go with manager. Team manager.
Probably Strachan.
Gordon Strachan. And was there anything in particular about his man management that really shone from other managers?
Gordon Strachan was a funny character because he's not physically a big guy, but he's got a strange aura about him, and he can talk. you don't want to argue with him because you always lose. But he just the influence he had on me and all the other players who were playing for him. It's just the meaning of a hard work and team effort. Those two terms come to my mind, and they are very important in football. So I don't.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. And the biggest tackler you've ever seen on the training ground?
Biggest tackler.
Doesn't hold back whether it's training or match day.
Oh, there are quite a few. I would say Michael Svensson was one of those players.
Yeah.
Centre half who played for Southampton, got injured. Ali McCoist, he was a tough guy. People think, he's a clever guy. He's a wonderful character, friendly, clever. People know him as a goal scorer, but he was a tough guy as well. I'll tell you that.
Doesn't hold back.
No.
Biggest regret in football, Antti?
Well, that relegation with Southampton would easily be that would probably be...
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And the best captain you played under, Antti?
Again, there are some good names in there. Sami Hyypiä was one, a real leader. Jason Dodd, wonderful captain. Those two at least.
Those two.
Yeah. McBride at Fulham, American striker. Yeah. He was
Brian McBride,
Yeah. Wonderful guy. Great captain.
And the last one, your most memorable moment in football, in the game, your most memorable moment of your whole career.
Does that include being part of a coaching staff?
Yeah, of course. The whole football career.
Most memorable moment was the final whistle against Liechtenstein last November when Finland got into the major finals first time ever. That was a very, very emotional moment for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, I mean, if we go on to that, obviously, life after football, was coaching always something on the cards that you wanted to do?
It was, because I wanted to be involved in football. I don't necessarily mean I don't miss the pressure playing at the highest level, because I can tell you that if you make a mistake as a goalkeeper in a Premier League or for the national team, it's a lonely place. It's not easy, but
yeah. Because I was going to say, because obviously nowadays, there's Gary Neville's highlighting every single mistake someone makes. There's no escape from it, and it's always in the media. How do you deal with that after a game, sort of mentally trying to?
I was just trying to. I told myself that we all make mistakes, and it's not always easy. And then I was pretty like, if I had a bad game on Saturday, Sunday was awful. I was like I was cursing myself and saying that. But what I noticed, which was pretty good, that like on Monday on a training ground, I couldn't wait for the next game because I just wanted to make things right. And that's a good thing for any athlete, that you probably feel bad about 24 hours, but then you realize, especially when you get older, that it happens. And then some people hide, and some people think that let there be a next game. I want to prove everybody wrong. I'm still good, and that was part of my character, definitely.
Great stuff. So I mean, if we move on to the sort of business side after football, are you involved in any business currently, or at the time when you were in football, when you were coming to the end of your career, was there a certain thing you think I'm going to invest in this? Or
I actually started a company 2 years ago. And I always thought that apart from playing football and being a goalkeeping coach, one day I want to start some sort of business and trying to do something outside from football. And 2 years ago, I started a company with 3 other guys. And now we're still a startup company, but things are moving along, and hopefully after this corona is over, we can really kick off, and it will be exciting times.
I think a lot of businesses are thinking of that, Antti. So when you went into business, were there many traits that you can take from your football career and your coaching that you're doing into business?
Yeah, I think I think like if you be involved in a team sports, it really helps in any area of life. And I always felt comfortable that because I worked with for as a professional footballer, I was like for 15 years, and you meet different kind of people. You don't necessarily get along really well with some of them, but you have to work with them because you have a common aim. You want to do well as a team. And in business, it's the same. You know, we're working with the other people. You meet clients, you meet dealers, you meet all sorts of people, and you just have to try and make things work. And I've always told my kids, like, you know, or any young kid or their parents, that if we ever get a chance to get involved in a team sports, please do it, because you learn, you know, valuable lessons during those times. It's not always easy. You meet people that, you know, you don't necessarily like, but you still have to work together, and that's how it is in a you know, in any work. I'm sure you will say the same, that, you know, when you work with a bunch of people, you know, you don't necessarily get along with them, like, but you have to do certain things to make things work. So I think it definitely helped me as a, you know, moving into in a different area in life.
And do you see the business as a new challenge in your life, a new page, something refreshing for yourself?
Yes, definitely. I'm so excited at the moment because you started from zero. You basically started something that you're not necessarily excellent in the first day, but you learn all the time. And thankfully, I have people around me that are very good at certain things, and I'm wise enough to, you know, to admit myself that I don't know everything about everything, and you just have to listen to people who have been in different businesses longer than you have, and then just have to listen and learn.
You briefly touched on it. Do you want to tell our listeners, you know, more about what the business is?
Yeah, well, I can give you a short version. 2 years ago, I spoke with a good friend of mine. He used to be a footballer. We played together under 16, under 17s for Finland, like back in the 80s. And he's a top nutritionist in Finland. He's been visiting big, you know, for example, big football clubs in Europe, like the biggest ones. And he knows everything that what there is to know about sports nutritionist. And he told me that you know, I don't know if you heard about it, but it might make you laugh. But we started making a beetroot juice. Does that say anything to you?
Okay.
And you can Google what beetroot juice, why athletes use it, but that's the concept at the moment, and we've been doing it for 2 years, and in January we came up with the product, and you know, we're pretty proud of it, but a lot of work to be done still.
Great stuff. So, I mean, how did you find the transition from being a footballer and then going into you know, goalkeeper coaching and then your business? Was it an easy thing to get used to?
Well, like I said,
it's
a totally new thing for me. Like I told you, I've been asking a lot of questions from different people who are experts on this in this field, but it helps that you have a sporting background. I think it's easier to meet people, and in our company, when there's 4 people in there, one is expert on marketing and selling, one is expert on sports nutrition, and my kind of expertise is like, I know a lot of people in Finland. Obviously, Finland is a small country, so it helps. But I know a lot of people in different sports, and you know, that's my job really, to go and meet people, and not only in football, but in all sports that you can imagine. And once, you know, when you played in a Premier League and being from Finland, so hopefully some of those people that go and meet, it's easier to get them to answer the phone and meet them, because you know, they might know that what I've been doing in my previous life, so it helps a little bit.
I mean, would you say there's anything in place for sort of young footballers coming through who might have just signed their first pro contract? Is there anything in place to sort of give them advice on what to do and how to maybe spend the money or what to do with it, or is it just
no? I would definitely
go as you are?
especially in football, in professional football, there's a lot of money in it at the moment, and we can, there are players who are way under 20 and earning a lot of money. They probably don't even realize at the moment how much money they are making, and it all probably seems really easy, and they think that this is gonna be the rest of my life. But being a professional footballer, it could all end tomorrow. You can pick up a serious injury or whatever. And the other thing I've been trying to speak to my younger goalies in Finland, like it's a very short time when you're earning good money. If you ever get a chance to earn like good money, like the Premier League footballers or Champions League footballers are earning at the moment, the peak is like between 20 and 30 probably. But most of the footballers, they quit when they are, I don't know what the average age is, but I would say something like 32 to 37, somewhere there. And then you have, if you stay healthy and nothing horrible happens, you have another 50 years to live. So even if you're earning a really good money over, let's say 5 or 6 or 7 year period, it probably won't last until you're 80 or 90 years old. So I'm always speaking to these younger goalkeepers and their parents when the clubs and calling and the agents are calling. Like, it's not only about when you're making a career plan. It's one side of it is like planning your, picking up the right clubs and what's the next step forward and so on and so on. But you have to have people around you who are, they know how to invest your money, and you have to have good people around you, because there are a lot of bad people in football as well.
Yeah, I'm sure you hear about them all the time on the press, don't you? So I mean, from your playing career, coaching, now business, a lot of your socials, Antti. There's a lot of fishing going on. Would you say that's your that's your getaway, your relaxing time?
Yeah, I definitely. It's hard to. People ask me about fishing, and I'm trying to explain it why it's so brilliant, but then you meet people who don't like fishing, and it's very difficult to explain why fishing is so relaxing. But I love it. I go to fishing every time I get a chance, and it's just when you're in the waters for, let's say, 8 hours, you hardly think about anything else. You're just thinking about where's the next fish, and the time absolutely flies by. And
it's just an opportunity to switch off.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Antti, thank you very much for coming on to the Football and Business podcast today. We've appreciated you having on, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. This was brought to you by Your Lead Machine and DPest. We look forward to you joining us for our next episode.
If you have any questions for us or things you'd like to know about the afterlife of a footballer, please let us know by dropping us a message on Instagram.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit like, share and subscribe.
And if there's a guest you'd like us to get on the show, please let us know.